Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown series, the show in which we take an in-depth and analytical and statistical look at different players, formations, systems, transfers, matches, everything now moving into next season. And for today's show, I'm going to do what is going to be our third look at what Arsenal could line up like next season. Now, I'm going to do this in a slightly different way to we have done previously. We did one about probably 2 months ago now, and we had so many different players in that team compared to what we think we might see now, because how links and transfers change and people are signed that we didn't expect to sign. And I did one about 2 weeks ago, which included the likes of Brazilians Everton. So it just goes to show how quickly and how sure we can be about certain players and how quickly that can change. So this one's going to be slightly different though, because I'm actually going to show you multiple lineups for different scenarios that we might come up against next season, and the types of players that we can use in Arsenal's lineup to deal with each individual separation of those matches effectively. So I hope you're enjoying the series. I hope you're enjoying all of these episodes that are going out, our raw reactions and tactical breakdowns and season previews as well, all available for you to watch. All you have to do is go back and watch them, and please, if you're enjoying them, give them a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new with those notifications turned on, so that when I do a raw reaction show, which will probably most likely be each afternoon or evening, just to catch up on all the latest Arsenal news, you'll be able to join us in our live chat and you won't miss a thing. But let's dive straight into these videos and talk about what Arsenal could look like next season. So what I'm going to show you initially, I'm going to break it down into different sections. So the first different lineup we're going to look at is when Arsenal come up against something which we seem to struggle with. And that's when we come up against our top 6 or even 8, as I'm doing this for, because we're seeing the likes of Leicester and Wolves get much closer to that top 6, and they're going to be teams which we need to take very, very seriously. Not of all teams, but they are full of a lot of quality and we need to watch out for them. So I've included both of those, and so this lineup is expected to see when we come up against the top 8 side. So you can see the lineup on your screen now, and let's talk about it. Now, the back line remains fairly the same. Now, there's some caveats to these lineups. The first one, of course, is the thinking that we will sign some players that are going to be included in the team that haven't yet signed. And the two I've included, as you can see, are Nicolas Pepe and Kieran Tierney. Now, you'll notice that I've not included a centre-back, and that's just because, as I've maintained throughout the show, or show, should I say, that I don't think we are going to get that centre-back. It's just not been enough links. There's not been enough concrete evidence. I know that we seemingly are working on one, and even if we were, I wouldn't like to name one personally at this point, because I just don't have any news or any inkling about what it possibly could be. Daniele Rugani, there's been links to him, but I just didn't want to include a centre-back. But if there is one, you can assume they would take one of the two centre-back positions. So if we look at this lineup, then we've got Bellerin, Holding, Socrates and Kieran Tierney as our back four in front of Bernd Leno. And then the midfield is sort of where we start things. Well, first of all, we should say it's a back four. This is what Unai Emery is definitely thinking of using into next season, sort of abandoning that back three system. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of Bellerin and Tierney, or if it isn't Tierney, it'll be Kolasinac most likely, bombing up that right or left-hand flank, providing a lot of opportunities for our strikers and for our midfielders by getting to the byline and shooting a ball across the box so that we can get an opportunity to score a goal. In terms of the midfield, though, we've got Torreira playing at the base of a midfield three. I can imagine us playing with sort of two number 8s, one more of a number 8 than the other. In this case, it's definitely Dani Ceballos, a new signing from Real Madrid. And next to him would be the Granit Xhaka, or I've also put there as an option, Matteo Guendouzi. Now, you'll notice how I haven't put Joe Willock in there, and don't worry, Joe Willock is coming on a little bit later up to talk about where I think he'll fit in. For me, if you're going to be playing against a top 6 or a top 8 side, your midfield needs to be strong, and I know I can already hear ironic jeers that why would you then put Granit Xhaka in, but he is a very good passer of the ball. He finds people in spaces that not many other players can. He can find balls in behind the defence that we need, and he is still a good marshal and a good leader in that midfield for people to sort of look to and say, this is where we need to be to marshal that midfield. Torreira's not going to be able to do that anywhere near as much, although he is more mobile. He is much better at making those interceptions, and that's why I'm putting him at that base of that midfield. And then Ceballos' role is certainly what we've really lost in Ramsey, to be the technical player, to drive the ball forwards, carry the ball and find those passes, those incisive balls in behind. He's got better dribbling skill, I believe, than Aaron Ramsey, and actually he can find passes a lot better than Aaron. He keeps the play a lot more simple than Aaron Ramsey ever did, but he doesn't have the same engine. Whilst he does run up and down the pitch, we do lack a little bit of running from losing the Welshman. If we then move on to the front three, now you'll notice that obviously we did a video which you can still check out talking about where Aubameyang fits in now that we're most likely going to be signing Nicolas Pepe. You can see there from the front three, I've gone for Pepe, Aubameyang and Iwobi. Now, Lacazette's omission basically comes down to me thinking that if we play with both Lacazette and Aubameyang, you are most likely going to see them play in a front two against a top six side. I can't think that we would play all three of them in a front three. I think that would be very, very attack-minded. Maybe in the home games, possibly, but certainly in away games, I think will be more conservative. And Iwobi gives you that extra bit of running, that dribbling power as well to carry the ball away from the defence that you don't really get from either. You don't really get from Lacazette for sure. And Lacazette has actually lost the ball in certain positions against some of these top six sides, which has cost us goals. We saw it against Spurs. I think we've seen it against Liverpool as well. That Lacazette has definitely cost us in those positions. And I took that into account when making that decision. Aubameyang for me is the best striker. Even though we're thinking of shifting out to the left in a front three, which includes all three of our key attacking players of Pepe, Aubameyang and Lacazette. But I think he's the one that starts if you're going to pick between one or the other at this stage, just for his goal-scoring record and his poaching ability and his ability to run at absolutely rapid speeds and take the pressure off the defence. Now, what I want to do with the second lineup, which you're going to see, is then shift to imagine that we're in a position where we're winning these games or we need to hold on to these games. I want to put on the screen basically a defensive lineup after making certain substitutions in the game. So either you see in there Lacazette or Aubameyang being played up front, but then you've got the opportunity now, because we're keeping Kolasinac and we're keeping Kieran Tierney, you can take off your left winger, be that Iwobi, and you can bring Kolasinac in a more of advanced position, because we know that defensively he's got a lot of flaws to his game, but he can cover that left-back role. We've seen it with Monreal playing left-back and Kolasinac playing further forwards, but I can see that being done with Kieran Tierney, with Kolasinac playing ahead of him. Alternatively, you could push Kieran Tierney up, bring Nacho Monreal into play in that left-back role. Either way, it works, but it's just something that we could do to make ourselves a little bit more sturdy. Some people would say you shouldn't go defensive. Some would say that you should go and try and kill off the game, but there are some instances where you do need to hold on to these games, and this is something that we could do. The next one is taking the Nicolas Pepe off after he's done his job. He's hopefully scored a few goals, and that's the reason that we're in the lead, but we need to take him off and bring someone like Reiss Nelson on, who can provide you with that energy and width and running. We know how well he looked in the Emirates Cup yesterday, taking on players, bursts of speed, a really good impact substitution. Having spoken to Drew, that's what he did a lot for Hoffenheim last season. He came on as an impact sub. And in a situation where you need to be more defensive, he provides you with that running, with that dribbling ability to take the ball away from the defence and relieve the defensive pressure. So I think that's a completely legitimate decision to make. And finally, the last one will be taking Danny Ceballos off, who's done his job in that role, being creative. And now we need to make sure we've locked down that midfield. So a midfield three of Torreira, Xhaka, and most likely Guendouzi. There's the option to play Willock maybe if you want to provide yourself and you don't want to take too much away from that attacking part of your midfield. You can put Willock in there, but I think Guendouzi is a very good runner. He's a little terrier in that midfield and he provides us with a lot. The defence doesn't really change for me at this stage. I don't think you'd see too much of a change in the defence were we to go in to a more defensive style, unless we saw a formation change and went to a back five, of course, which you'd see obviously another centre back come on instead of seeing Kolasinac take on that left wing role. Moving on then to what I think will line up like against bottom half sides. Bottom half sides, of course, have been a little bit of a banana skin for us. We lost key matches in the end of last season against the likes of Crystal Palace. We weren't attacking enough. We played the likes of El Neni against Crystal Palace, and those games really, really cost us. So you can see from the lineup there, it's much more of an attacking game. Backline stays the same. Bellerin and Tierney providing those key runs from fullback positions, overlapping the wingers and creating those chances. The midfield has slightly changed now. Ceballos is no longer the furthest forward in that midfield three. He drops back slightly, replaces Xhaka, and goes next to Torreira. He can play in a more deeper role. If you look into Ceballos' stats, his defensive abilities are much better than what Ramsey's were, which is quite interesting when you look at that, considering how much Ramsey did get back. But Ceballos actually has got a lot of defensive talent to his game, not only in a more of an offensive sense. And then Mesut Ozil, I think, who's someone who's had a really good pre-season. There's even arguments that you could say that he could play in some of the bigger matches, especially at home. The away games, I know a lot of people have their reservations about, but in the home games against the lesser sides, obviously in quotation marks, he can be someone that's going to really be good against the likes of, let's say, Crystal Palace, let's say, I want to say Watford then as a decent team, but they are Sheffield United. These games that we need to kill off, these games that we need to make sure we're scoring and getting that goal difference up and scoring as many goals as possible. And the front three is the front three that many people want to see, with Lacazette up top, Aubameyang left, and Pepe on the right. I think you don't lose out too much on the defensive side of things because you've got a good solid midfield there with a defence that aren't going to be coming up against the best offensive players in the world against those lesser sides. And you've hopefully got a midfield three and attacking three that can create chances and be really offensive moving forwards. If we then move on to say those situations in which we see us all the time getting into a bit of a hairy moment, we go 1-0 down, or we're still 1-0 down with about 20-25 minutes left in the game. We need to make some changes to make ourselves even more offensive, to go all out to try and win the game, effectively throwing the kitchen sink. The change that I've gone for is to take off Lacazette and move Aubameyang to a more of a central position and bring on someone like Iwobi or possibly Martinelli or even Nelson, possibly as those impact players that can play on that left wing. Pepe remains on for me in this situation because of his goal scoring threat, and he's a game winner in certain situations, so he stays there for me. And then Mkhitaryan comes on for Özil. Mkhitaryan is someone who's also in with a shout of starting anyway in these fixtures because of the amount of talent that he's shown in pre-season. Had a really good pre-season, but last season he did quite suffer from some inconsistencies in his performances, and a lot of people got frustrated with him. So Mkhitaryan comes in there for me, and then bringing in Joe Willock for someone like Granit Xhaka or Ceballos, for instance, is definitely someone that we can rely on to be a bit more or less passive and a bit more offensive in our midfield. Torreira for me stays on all the time. He needs to be that energetic player that's going to keep going throughout the 90 minutes and win us those tackles to recover possession and move the ball up to the other end of the pitch as quickly as possible. Now I'm going to finish talking about, obviously these are all best case scenarios, imagining that every player is fit in the side. Now obviously when we come up against Newcastle, and I'm sure this may change as we get closer to the preview against Newcastle as the first game of the season, but this is sort of the lineup that I think we could go for against Newcastle away from home. You'll see there's some key omissions, some people that I've left out. But if we start from the back and go forwards, obviously we don't know if Kieran Tierney is coming in, and he's actually recovering from an injury at this moment. So even if he does, there's no certainties that he would start. So I've gone with Kolasinac at left back. Then we've got Maitland-Niles playing at right back because we know that Bellerin still might be out come the start of the season. And in the centre-back role, it's a similar situation because Holding, we don't know if he's going to be starting. So I've put Callum Chambers in there, who's looked a lot better than what Mustafi has done. And Mustafi's actually been linked with a move away from Arsenal at the moment. Clubs from Italy being involved with a possible deal there. Fingers crossed we can get some money in for the German. Socrates maintains his place for sure. And then in the midfield, I've gone for Xhaka, Ceballos and Willock. I think Willock's had an absolutely fantastic pre-season. I don't see there's any issues with starting the young Englishman. I think if you've got the opportunity to start someone like him, but you've got other options like Guendouzi and Özil. Özil obviously didn't play in the Emirates Cup because of the issues with, and the same reason why Kolasinac didn't play because of the horrible incidents that he got involved in. I'm not sure if he would play because you know what Emery's like. Doesn't particularly like him away from home. That's why he didn't start starting the game against Bournemouth, I believe it was last season. And so therefore I think Willock is an absolutely fair choice for that midfield. If we then look at the front three, I've gone for Pepe, obviously coming back off the African Cup of Nations quite a while ago, so hopefully he'll be back in time to start, and if he does, obviously that's going to be a really big boost for the team moving forwards. Aubameyang starts up top because of the whole Lacazette injury scenario that happened in the Emirates Cup. They said it's a minor injury, but I'm just taking precautions here. I'd much rather that we went in with taking care of our players and not rushing players back from injury too quickly. So I've gone for Aubameyang up top with Reiss Nelson playing on that left wing. Isn't it ironic how we talked about players previously early in the season saying I have no reason to start Reiss Nelson. I think we need to ease him in. But if Iwobi's not available as well, because of obviously coming back from the African Cup of Nations, played a lot further in the competition than Nicolas Pepe did. I don't know if he's going to be available. He hasn't played in pre-season for us, of course, whereas Reiss Nelson has. So as Martinelli could be an example of someone who could come in as well. But I think Reiss Nelson is more than willing to start. Definitely more than willing. But I think Unai Emery may be more than willing to start Reiss Nelson to provide us with that dribbling skill and ability and that running on that left flank. He can play on both sides, so there's absolutely no issues at all bringing him in. We've got energy from the bench. We've got Guendouzi. We've got Martinelli, that players that could come on. We've got Özil as well, who could come on and provide some real damage from the bench. If Lacazette's fit enough to make the bench, you've got him there as well. I think that's a decent lineup that definitely has got enough skill and ability to beat Newcastle. But that's just my thoughts on the different lineups that we could see. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Always appreciate your comments, always do. And if you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll see you again very soon, most likely this afternoon for another Raw Reaction show to break down all the latest Arsenal news. But until then, have a fantastic day. See you lunch later. And as always, up the Arsenal.